The sky above Hawkins splits open on a November night in 1984, and nothing will ever be the same. Picture this, a tear in reality itself, bleeding crimson and gold across the darkness above a town that thought it had already seen the impossible. Not a gate to the upside down, not the familiar, horrifying breach that had consumed Will Byers and unleashed the Mind Flayer's shadow. This is something else entirely. Something that defies even Hawkins' National Laboratory's understanding of dimensional physics. Something that burns with the light of a dying world light years away. Inside the basement of the Wheeler house, Mike is arranging miniature figures on a hand-drawn dungeon map when the flash comes. For 3 eternal seconds, his basement floods with light bright as noon, bright as summer, bright as something that doesn't belong in November's cold darkness. His hand freezes over a painted red dragon. Through the window, he watches the impossible, a streak of fire descending with controlled purpose, slowing against every law of physics, executing maneuvers that no meteor, no satellite, no earthly craft could achieve. It's heading for the woods, the same woods where they found 11, the same woods that have witnessed so much strangeness. Mike's fingers close around his walkie-talkie. "Guys," he breathes into the receiver, his voice tight with a mixture of fear and something else. That dangerous curiosity that's kept the party alive through everything Hawkins has thrown at them. "Guys, something just fell from the sky." Within 20 minutes, the party was cycling towards the crash site, following Lucas's geometric calculations through darkening streets. They found it in a clearing, a silvery pod embedded in scorched earth, glowing with otherworldly light, its surface reflecting colors that shouldn't exist in nature. Then it opened. The figure inside was humanoid, teenage, wearing a dark undersuit that seemed to drink in light. When his eyes opened, they were impossibly blue. He sat up slowly, confused, disoriented. "Where is this?" His voice was rough with sleep. "Hawkins, Indiana, Earth," Mike said. "Welcome. I'm Clark." The stranger managed. "Clark Kent. My world. Krypton. It was dying. My parents sent me away." His hands went to his temples. "Everything's foggy." Dustin's scientific mind raced. "Space travel. Disorientation's normal. Where's Krypton?" "Not in this solar system," Clark said softly, looking at the stars with profound sadness. Before they could process this, engine sounds cut through the forest. Hawkins' lab response teams closing in fast. Searchlights swept between trees. Clark tilted his head, listening to something beyond normal hearing. 17 men, heavily armed, approaching from 3 directions. He looked at the boys. "Hold on." What happened next defied physics. Clark wrapped his arms around the group, and they simply flew, up through bare branches, above searchlights and confused shouts, over sleeping Hawkins, to land gently in Mike's backyard 90 seconds later. In Mike's basement, the questions came fast. Clark explained what he could. His cells were absorbing solar energy, amplifying his strength, his senses, everything. He could hear heartbeats from across houses, see through walls, fly without wings. Earth's yellow sun was transforming him into something beyond human. "You're solar-powered," Dustin breathed. "Biological energy conversion. That's incredible." "It's terrifying," Clark corrected. "What if I hurt someone?" "Then you learn control," Mike said firmly. "Like 11 did." 11! They told him everything. About the girl with telekinetic powers who'd escaped Hawkins' lab. About the gate to the upside down and the monsters that emerged. About Will's possession by the Mind Flayer. About battles fought and won through friendship and sacrifice. Clark's expression darkened. "I can feel it. Something pressing against reality here. Something massive and hungry." "The Mind Flayer," Will confirmed quietly. It's always waiting. Then I'm meant to help. Clark decided. If I have these powers, maybe there's a reason I'm here. Their planning was interrupted by an authoritative knock. Hopper stood at the door, looking exhausted and unsurprised to find 5 teenagers instead of 4. So, Hopper said, eyes on Clark. Want to tell me why the lab's tearing apart the woods looking for an unidentified atmospheric entry vehicle? Clark met his gaze directly. I'm Clark Kent. I'm from another world. My planet died. I just arrived. I mean, no harm. Hopper laughed. Sharp. Tired. Of course. Why would it be simple? He pinched his nose. All right, kid from space. We need to talk. They talked until dawn. Hopper asked sharp questions, capabilities, threat level, intentions. Clark answered honestly. He didn't fully understand his powers yet, but he meant no harm. He just wanted to find his place. The lab's a problem, Hopper said. They'll want to study you. But I've got a cabin. Remote. Off-grid. You lay low there while we figure things out. I don't want to be a burden. Kid, you flew here from another planet. We're past polite. Hopper stood. You stay hidden. The boys teach you about Earth. I create paperwork. We keep you quiet. Agreed? Agreed. As dawn broke, they finalized plans. The boys would guide Clark, Hopper would handle documentation, and Clark would master his abilities. But 12 miles away, Dr. Sam Owens studied data from the crash site with concern. The energy readings matched nothing known. The quantum patterns resembled upside-down fluctuations. Something powerful had arrived. And in the upside-down itself, frozen at November 6, 1983, the Mind Flayer stirred. It felt this new presence, radiating energy unlike anything before. New prey, new possibilities, new pathways to invasion. Clark Kent had just become the most valuable piece on the board. Days passed. Clark stayed at Hopper's isolated cabin, absorbing sunlight that transformed him daily. His strength increased, his senses refined. The forest became a symphony of information, heartbeats a mile away, individual tree needles on distant ridges, coffee brewing in farmhouses miles distant. 11 appeared at the cabin one morning, assessing him with eyes that had seen too much. Hopper said, "You're different, like me." "Show me," she challenged when he hesitated. Clark pressed his fingers against a support beam. With casual pressure, the oak groaned, bent, snapped. Elle responded by lifting the broken piece with her mind, no strain showing. "Papa wanted weapons," she said softly. "You could hurt people, a lot. I won't." "Mind Flayer wants to control everything," Elle warned. "Your power, if it took that. How do you resist it? Push, with mind, with anger, with friends." She looked at him intently. "You're not alone. Not anymore." The boys arrived with supplies, their joy at seeing Elle palpable. They spent the day transforming the cabin into headquarters. Mike sketched maps, Dustin set up equipment, Lucas established lookouts. Will, with his intimate upside-down knowledge, described its properties in detail. Elle worked with Clark on control, teaching meditation techniques. "Feel the power. Don't push away, don't fear, just feel." Clark turned his awareness inward, sensing energy suffusing every cell. It wanted to explode outward, but Elle's method taught restraint. They tested his heat vision, at first accidentally melting 3 trees and a boulder, eventually learning to write his name on wood without causing flames. "You're like Superman," Mike breathed. "Alien with incredible powers who protects people." Elle smiled. "Superman. Good friend." Meanwhile, Dr. Owens tracked Clark's energy signature across Hawkins. "Mobile readings," Rebecca reported. "It's learning to control emissions, or hiding deliberately." Owens reviewed the pod's materials, a metallic crystal matrix unknown to science, defying physics. Alien technology, decades beyond our capabilities. Satellite footage showed 4 bikes approaching the crash site, then all 5 signals vanishing. The bikes belonged to Wheeler, Henderson, Sinclair, and Byers. Of course it's those boys. Owens muttered. They'd survived the Mind Flayer, saved Hawkins, earned protective connections. We watch, we monitor. But no heavy tactics. That entity hasn't caused damage, suggests intelligence and restraint. He contacted Hopper on a secure line. After tense negotiation, Hopper admitted knowledge of a scared kid with extraordinary abilities who wasn't a threat. If something goes wrong? Owens pressed. Cut him off from sunlight. Extreme temperatures might disrupt energy absorption. But if you try neutralizing him, you go through me first. I'm thinking how to help him, Jim, and all of us if needed. Can he be contacted? For what? The Upside Down hasn't gone away. Another incident might require all resources we have, including his. Hopper agreed to arrange a meeting. One shot at Alliance before circumstances forced their hand. The Upside Down stretched endlessly, vines pulsing with sickly light, toxic particles drifting like poisonous snow. This was Vecna's domain, where Henry Creel had become something terrible, commanding particles into the Mind Flayer's form. Through quantum-entangled spores, Vecna watched Clark train, watched him fly with increasing grace, watched him refine heat vision to surgical precision. Most interesting were the limitations. Strength waned in darkness, powers dependent on external energy. Show me more, Vecna commanded. He saw Clark with the boys, laughing, with 11, practicing together, helping Hopper repair the cabin, standing alone at night, gazing at stars with profound loneliness. Vecna understood isolation. He'd been isolated his entire existence, as a child with uncontrollable powers, as a lab prisoner, as an upside-down exile. Clark stood apart, unique, powerful beyond measure, yet fundamentally alone. Isolation was a weapon Vecna wielded expertly. Perhaps he didn't need force. Perhaps seduction would work. Show Clark that humans would never accept him, that his power would always inspire fear. Through the dimensional barrier's thin places, Vecna sent whispers into Clark's consciousness. Do they fear you yet? How many have you hurt by accident? You don't belong here. You never will. I understand you. I know what it's like to be powerful and alone. The whispers worked incrementally. Clark's confidence wavered, doubts multiplying. But then Elle intervened. Something's wrong, she told Clark urgently. Something's in your head, whispering, like it did to Will, the Mind Flayer. You think it's trying to possess me? Not possess. Test. Find weakness. Build doubt. Elle's eyes narrowed. But you're strong. Push back. How? Fill your mind with truth. With friends. With light. You're not alone. Remember that. Clark closed his eyes. When he opened them, they blazed with determination. The doubts remained, but were contained now, walled off by conscious effort and Elle's support. Vecna felt his influence waver. The girl had recognized his technique. He'd need subtler approaches, or perhaps direct confrontation, lure Clark into the Upside Down where defenses would lower. But he'd need bait. Will Byers, still vulnerable from previous possession, would serve perfectly. But Vecna underestimated 2 things: the depth of connection between Clark and the party, and the rate at which Clark's powers were growing. By the time Vecna struck, Clark would be far stronger than calculated. For now, Vecna waited in frozen darkness, convinced victory was merely timing. After all, he'd waited decades. What were a few more weeks? It was Saturday morning when the Mind Flayer made its move. The party gathered at Palace Arcade, enjoying normalcy. Will stood apart, sketching in his notebook. Then he froze. His pencil dug into paper with sudden pressure. His eyes went distant, glazed. Temperature plummeted, breath misting, frost forming on game cabinets. "Will!" Mike grabbed his shoulders. "Will, are you here?" Through Will's scarred consciousness, Vecna delivered his message. "Come to us. The Byers' house. Tonight. Come alone, or the boy suffers." The presence vanished. Will collapsed, gasping, skin icy. Within 20 minutes, everyone assembled at the Byers' house. The party, Steve, Nancy, Jonathan, Hopper, Joyce, Clark, and Elle. "It's a trap," Lucas stated. "The Mind Flayer wants Clark in the Upside Down." "But if I don't go, it'll hurt Will," Clark said. "It's already hurting him." Joyce countered. "Using him as bait." "We go together," Dustin proposed. "Multiple entry points, coordinated timing." "No," Hopper said firmly. "We're not sending kids into that death trap." "We've been there before," Mike argued. "We know it, and Clark's our friend." "I'm calling Owens," Hopper decided. "There's no time," Will said quietly. "It wants him tonight. If we delay, it'll do something worse. Like open another gate," Elle said grimly. "Force one. It's been building power." Clark stood. "I'm going in. Scout mission. 10 minutes maximum. If it's a trap, I spring it and survive." "Can you maintain a tether?" he asked Elle. "Keep me connected so I find my way back?" Elle nodded slowly. "If you don't go far, if connection stays strong." They spent hours preparing. Dustin rigged a modified walkie-talkie. Lucas prepared weapons for defenders. Elle meditated, readying for the mental strain. Clark stood absorbing final sunlight, storing maximum solar energy. At sunset, they assembled in the Byers' living room where dimensional barriers were thinnest. Elle took Clark's hand, establishing a psychic bond, a golden thread linking their minds. "Remember," Elle said, "you're not alone. I'm with you. Feel the connection." Clark moved to the wall, reaching toward the shimmering weak point in reality. The barrier resisted, then yielded. His hand passed through into cold darkness beyond. Then he pushed through completely. The Upside Down crashed into his senses. Oppressive darkness, thick, toxic air burning his lungs, fundamental cold sapping heat and energy. His solar reserves began draining immediately. "Elle," he whispered into the walkie. "I'm through. Can you hear me?" Static, then her distorted voice. "Hear you. Connection. Strong. Careful." The house around him was vine-covered, decaying, frozen at gate opening. Vines pulsed deliberately. Particles swirled, avoiding his body. And distant, something massive shifted. "Show yourself!" Clark called. "You wanted me here. Let's talk." The temperature plummeted. Particles coalesced into something huge, spider-like, towering above everything, the Mind Flayer manifest. "Welcome. We have studied you, learned you, and now we will have you." "I'm not here to be had. What do you want?" This place is thin. The barrier weakens. The girl opened the way. "We exploit it, but you ask wrong questions. Better question, what do you want, stranger from stars? To protect people, to stop you. Noble, futile. You are alone here, powerless. Your light fades, soon too weak to resist. Then we remake you." The shadow lunged. Clark barely reacted. Tendrils wrapped around him, pulling, constraining. He fought back, snapping bonds. More formed, colder, more substantial, pressing against his consciousness. "Elle, it's attacking. Pull me back." Static roared. The Mind Flayer blocked the signal. Clark flew upward, bursting through the roof, trying to gain distance. The shadow followed, vast as thunderclouds. "You cannot flee. This is our world. Here, we are infinite. Here, you are nothing." A massive limb slammed him into corrupted trees. His heat vision activated reflexively, burning vegetation. More vines replaced destroyed ones, energy depleting fast. Maybe 5 minutes remaining, maybe less. But Clark hadn't survived Krypton's death to fall here. He flew at the Mind Flayer's center, fists glowing. His punch scattered particles, but they reconstituted instantly. You couldn't punch smoke, couldn't hurt something with no single form. You understand now. Understanding precedes acceptance. Acceptance precedes integration. Your power, our will. Together we breach barriers. Together we consume all worlds. Never. Death is not an option we permit, but unconsciousness. The psychic assault intensified, voices screaming about futility, images of Krypton dying, Earth burning, every civilization falling. Clark's defenses cracked. He fell from the sky, but before impact, light bloomed in darkness. Elle stood at the dimensional barrier, hands pressed against it, nose bleeding from strain. Behind her, others added support. Hopper, Joyce, the boys lending belief and faith. Through their connection, Elle projected something the Upside Down hadn't experienced. Sunlight. Not physical light, but psychic light. Concentrated belief and hope of people refusing to let their friend be taken. That light flowed along the thread to Clark, reigniting his determination. He wasn't alone, had never been alone. His eyes blazed with renewed purpose, psychic light surrounding him like armor. The Mind Flayer recoiled. This was pure human connection, anathema to its nature. No, this is not possible. You are alone. All beings are ultimately alone. You're wrong, Clark said powerfully. I have friends, family, people who won't let me fall. That's something you'll never understand. You've never been anything but alone. Just stolen thoughts and consumed consciousnesses. You don't know what connection means. He followed Elle's thread toward the barrier. The Mind Flayer pursued, but each touch of psychic light made it flinch. Clark reached the thin place, pressed through, tumbled into the buyer's living room. Hands caught him, Hopper, Mike, Steve. The barrier sealed with an audible snap. Clark collapsed onto carpet, gasping, trembling. Less than 7 minutes in the Upside Down, but it felt like hours. Reserves nearly depleted, body aching, mind battered, but alive. Safe. Home. Never again, Joyce said firmly. Agreed, Hopper added. Elle knelt beside him, exhausted, blood from her nose, but smiling. Told you. Not alone. Thank you. All of you. That light you sent saved me. They helped him outside to remaining sunlight. He turned his face toward it desperately, cells absorbing energy, beginning slow recovery. What did you learn? Dustin asked. Clark gathered his thoughts. It's dying. The Upside Down. A dead world frozen at death's moment. The Mind Flayer isn't conquering because it's evil. It's trying to survive. It's a parasite that exhausted its host, needing fresh dimensions or death. That makes it more dangerous, Lucas noted. Yes, a desperate enemy is unpredictable. It's going to make a major move soon. Multiple gates. Full invasion. Then we prepare, Nancy said. Mobilize everyone. And find its weakness, Jonathan added. I saw something, Clark said. The Mind Flayer's a hive mind, millions of particles connected by central consciousness. But that consciousness has a physical anchor coordinating everything. If we find it, sever that connection. The whole thing collapses, Dustin finished excitedly. But where's the anchor? Max asked. I think I know, Will said quietly. When possessed, I felt its center. It's not just in the Upside Down, it exists in both dimensions simultaneously, half in each world. The old gate site. Hopper realized. Residual dimensional stress? The Mind Flayer anchored itself there during invasion, establishing permanent presence even after closure. We verify this, Clark said, standing now, partially restored. Examine the gate site, and if there's an anchor, we destroy it. Lucas said flatly. It won't be simple, Elle warned. The Mind Flayer knows now. It will defend. Then we go with everything, Clark said grimly. The lab. L's powers, my abilities. We end this before another invasion. We save Hawkins. They looked at each other. Kids and adults, humans and alien, psychics and normals. Through courage and connection, they'd survived impossible dangers. But this would be their greatest challenge. Direct assault on the Mind Flayer's core. Final confrontation between light and darkness. We plan carefully, Hopper said. One shot, no second chances, clear. Nods all around. Then let's get to work. We've got a monster to kill. As night fell, two forces prepared. Defenders of humanity, brave and mortal, and ancient evil that believed victory inevitable. But the Mind Flayer had erred. It underestimated connection's power, strength from standing together, light emerging when refusing despair. And it had severely underestimated a young man from a dead world, powered by a yellow sun, guided by compassion, determined to protect his new home. The final battle approached, and Hawkins would be where it was decided. As night fell and they prepared to head back to town, Hopper would be coming to check on Clark later, and they couldn't all be caught here. They stood together on the cabin's repaired porch. Clark had already fixed the support beam he'd broken, using his strength to splice the wood and secure it with materials from Hopper's shed. The repairs were crude, but functional. We'll be back tomorrow, Mike promised. Same time. We're going to help you master your abilities, and then we're going to be ready. Lucas finished. For whatever comes. I have a question, Will said softly. Everyone turned to him. Clark, can you hear the upside down? Clark went still, focusing his enhanced senses beyond the normal, beyond the natural sounds of the forest and the distant noises of civilization. He pushed his hearing deeper, searching for something else, something wrong. And there, at the very edge of his perception, he found it. A whisper, a psychic static, a presence that felt like cold fingers dragging across his mind. It came from nowhere and everywhere, a dimensional echo that bypassed normal physics to touch consciousness directly. Yes, Clark said. I hear it. It sounds like screaming, but distant, behind walls. That's the dimensional barrier, Dustin said. It's thin here in Hawkins, thinner than anywhere else in the world, probably. The gate might be closed, but the barrier itself is damaged, stressed. And that thing on the other side, Clark said, his voice grim. The Mind Flayer. It's pressing against those walls. Always. Will confirmed. It never stops. It just waits. Then we don't wait, Clark decided. We prepare, we train, we become ready to defend this place and these people, because that's what Superman does, right? He protects people. Mike grinned. That's exactly what Superman does. As the boys pedaled away into the darkness, their tail lights disappearing down the forest trail, Elle lingered for a moment longer. She looked up at Clark with those knowing eyes. You're not just refugee, she said. You're guardian now, like me. We're guardians together, Clark corrected. I think Hawkins is going to need both of us. Yes, Elle agreed. Then, with sudden intensity, don't let it in. The Mind Flayer. Don't let it touch your mind. It changes you, breaks you. I'll be careful. Be more than careful. Be strong, strong in here. She tapped her temple, then her heart. Here too. Then she was gone, vanishing into the trees with practiced stealth. Clark stood alone on the porch, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, light years away, was the remnant of Krypton, an expanding cloud of cosmic debris that had once been his home. And here, in Hawkins, Indiana, was a new threat, a darkness that wanted to consume not just one world, but potentially all worlds. Clark Kent, the last son of Krypton, closed his eyes and felt the lingering warmth of the day's sunlight in his cells. Tomorrow, he would be stronger still, and the day after, stronger yet. He would learn, he would grow, he would become whatever this world needed him to be. Because that's what Jor-El had sent him here to do, to survive, yes, but also to matter, to make a difference. And in Hawkins, Indiana, in 1984, surrounded by brave kids and impossible dangers, Clark Kent would do exactly that. Dr. Samuel Owens stared at the holographic display floating above his desk, watching energy patterns ripple across a three-dimensional map of Hawkins and the surrounding region. The readings made no sense, or rather, they made too much sense in entirely wrong ways. "Run the analysis again," he told his assistant, a young technician named Rebecca, who'd been recruited from MIT's quantum physics department 3 months ago. She was brilliant, detail-oriented, and importantly, pragmatic enough to handle the reality of what Hawkins National Laboratory actually did. "Sir, I've run it 6 times," Rebecca said, her voice professionally neutral but with an edge of concern. "The results are consistent. There's a new energy signature in Hawkins, something that registers on spectral wavelengths we've never encountered before. It's not upside-down radiation, wrong quantum signature, but it's definitely not natural. Location? That's the problem. The signature is mobile. It's moved across town multiple times over the past 48 hours. Yesterday morning, it was in the northwest woods near the crash site. By evening, it had relocated to the southwest sector. This morning, it pinged near the downtown area, then vanished from our sensors entirely for 3 hours before reappearing on the outskirts. Can you track it in real time?" Rebecca shook her head. "Whatever it is, it's not continuous. It flares up periodically, then dampens, like it's learning to control its emission output. Or," she paused, considering, "or like it's deliberately hiding from us." Owens leaned back in his chair, troubled. In the year since the gate had been closed, Hawkins' lab had shifted its operational focus. Under his leadership, they'd moved away from Brenner's more aggressive methodologies. No more abducted children, no more torture disguised as training. They were here to understand the upside down, to protect Hawkins and the world from its threats, to help the few remaining subjects like 11 live normal lives as much as possible. But that didn't mean they could ignore potential threats. And a powerful, intelligent entity that had literally fallen from the sky definitely qualified as a potential threat. "The pod we recovered from the crash site," Owens said. "What did the materials analysis show?" "That's even weirder." Rebecca pulled up another display. "The hull is constructed from a metallic crystal matrix we can't identify. It's not in any periodic table. The molecular bonds are wrong. They shouldn't be stable under normal physics, but they are anyway. Dr. Chen thinks it might be some kind of metamaterial engineered at the atomic level. The technology required to build something like that is decades, maybe centuries beyond our current capabilities." "Alien," Owens said softly. "That would be the logical conclusion, yes. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question, where's the alien that was inside it?" That was indeed the question. The pod's interior had been designed for a passenger. The biomechanical cushioning, the life support connections, the stasis indicators all pointed to something or someone being transported within it. But the pod had been empty when Owens's team reached it. Its occupant already vanished into Hawkins's maze of streets and woods. "Pull up the atmospheric entry data again," Owens instructed, frame by frame. Rebecca complied, and they watched the satellite footage together. A bright streak across the night sky, decelerating in ways that defied ballistics physics, executing a controlled landing rather than a crash. Then the thermal bloom as the pod opened, a humanoid shape standing up, and, "There," Owens said. "Freeze it there." The image stuttered, showing the clearing in grainy infrared. 4 bicycle-riding silhouettes approached from the east. The pod's occupant stood to meet them. There was a flash of energy readings, a spike in local temperature, and then, "They're gone," Rebecca said. All 5 signals just vanish. No bodies, no heat signatures. They just disappeared. Not disappeared, Owens corrected. They left, somehow. And those 4 bikes, we tracked them, Rebecca said, anticipating his question. They belong to Michael Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, Lucas Sinclair, and Will Byers. Owens felt a chill run down his spine. Of course it was those boys. Of course they'd managed to stumble into yet another impossible situation. They had a talent for it. Will Byers, who'd been possessed by the Mind Flayer and survived. Mike Wheeler, Eleven's closest friend. Lucas and Dustin, who'd proven resourceful and brave beyond their years. And now they'd made contact with what appeared to be an extraterrestrial entity with significant power capabilities. "We need to bring them in for questioning," one of Owens's senior agents suggested. He was new, transferred from a different facility, and hadn't yet fully grasped the delicate political situation in Hawkins. "No," Owens said firmly. "Those kids have been through enough, and more importantly, they have influence, protective connections." He was thinking of Hopper, of course, but also of Joyce Byers and the community that had rallied around the boys after the events of the previous year. Heavy-handed tactics would backfire spectacularly. "Then what do you propose?" the agent asked. "We watch, we monitor, and we prepare. Whatever came down in that pod, it doesn't seem to have hostile intentions. If it did, we'd be dealing with casualties by now. Something with that kind of power signature could cause massive damage if it wanted to." Owens pulled up the energy analysis again, but instead it's hiding, learning, trying to stay off our radar. That suggests intelligence and restraint. "Or deception," the agent countered. "Waiting to strike when we least expect it." "Possibly," Owens conceded, "which is why we prepare. Rebecca, I want round-the-clock monitoring of that energy signature. Anytime it spikes, I want to know immediately. And get me everything we can find on these boys, where they go, who they talk to, any unusual behavior patterns." "Should we contact the Pentagon?" Rebecca asked. "Area 51? If we're dealing with an actual extraterrestrial? No, not yet. The moment we bring in the military, this situation gets out of our control. And I have a feeling that control is going to be very important." Owen stood up, moving to the window that overlooked Hawkins. From this height, the town looked peaceful, ordinary, a typical slice of American small-town life. But he knew better. Hawkins was a powder keg, and they'd just thrown an unknown accelerant into the mix. "Sir," Rebecca said hesitantly, "what if it's connected to the Upside Down? What if its arrival here wasn't coincidence?" That thought had occurred to Owens as well. Hawkins wasn't random. The gate had opened here because of specific circumstances, Eleven's powers, the lab's experiments, the thin places in reality that existed around the town. If an extraterrestrial escape pod had been drawn to this location specifically, it suggested either incredible bad luck or something more concerning. "Then we have a much bigger problem," Owens said quietly. "Because it means the Upside Down's influence extends beyond our dimension. It means we're not just dealing with an alternate Earth, but with something that can affect space across light years. And that..." He trailed off, the implications too vast and terrifying to fully articulate. "That would mean the Mind Flayer is bigger than we thought," Rebecca finished. "Not just a local threat, but a cosmic one." Exactly. But Owens didn't say it aloud. Instead, he returned to his desk and pulled up another file, the one on 11. She'd left Hawkins with the Byers family, relocating to California to start fresh, to have a normal life. But Owens knew that Jim Hopper kept in touch with her, knew she sometimes visited Hawkins secretly. If anyone could provide insight into this new, powered individual, it would be her. Get me a secure line to Chief Hopper. Owens instructed. No traceable channels, no official protocols, just a conversation between concerned adults. Off the books? Rebecca asked. Way off. This stays between me, Hopper, and whoever else absolutely needs to know. The last thing we need is panic in the streets or federal agents turning Hawkins into a martial law zone. As Rebecca set up the secure communication, Owens found himself thinking about Martin Brenner, his predecessor, the man who'd created this entire mess with his ruthless experiments and his obsession with weaponizing the extraordinary. Brenner would have tried to capture this alien immediately, would have seen it as another subject to be broken and controlled and exploited. But Owens wasn't Brenner. He'd seen the damage that approach caused. He'd read the reports on what the children had endured, had witnessed firsthand the consequences of treating people like resources rather than human beings. If this visitor from the stars could be reasoned with, could be allied with, that would be infinitely preferable to making an enemy of something that could apparently fly and generate its own energy field. The secure line connected, and Hopper's gruff voice came through the speaker. Owens, this had better be important. I was in the middle of dinner. How much do you know about what fell out of the sky 2 nights ago? Owens asked without preamble. There was a long pause. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Jim, please. I'm not looking to cause problems. I'm looking to prevent them. We detected a significant atmospheric entry event, extraterrestrial in origin, and I have very good reason to believe it made contact with certain young people we both care about. Another pause. Owens could practically hear Hopper calculating, weighing risks and loyalties. Off the record? Hopper finally asked. As off the record as it gets. Then yeah, I know about it. About him. And before you ask, no, he's not a threat. He's a scared kid trying to figure out where he fits in a world that isn't his home. He's been through hell, lost everything, and just wants to understand what he's become. Jim, that scared kid is generating energy outputs comparable to a small nuclear reactor. If he loses control, he won't. How can you be sure? Because I've met him, talked to him. And Doc, I've been a cop for 20 years. I know dangerous when I see it. This kid? He's powerful, yeah. But he's also fundamentally good. It's like it's radiating off him. You know how L has that intensity, that barely contained force? He's the opposite. He's all control and compassion. He literally came from another world, and the first thing he did was protect 4 teenagers from your recovery team. So you're hiding him. I'm protecting him. Same as I did for L. Same as I'd do for any kid who needed help. And if your lab wants to turn him into another one of Brenner's test subjects, you're going to have to go through me. Owens rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. Jim, I'm not Brenner. You know that. I'm not looking to hurt anyone. But I need to understand what we're dealing with. This individual, what's his name? Clark Kent. Clark Kent. Owens repeated, committing it to memory. What can he do, besides generate impressive energy signatures and apparently fly? Hopper was quiet for a moment, clearly debating how much to reveal. Finally, he's strong. Really strong. Bulletproof, probably. He can see through things, hear things from miles away. His senses are off the charts, and he's getting more powerful every day as his body adjusts to Earth's sun. Earth's sun is empowering him? That's what the boys figured out. His biology converts solar radiation into energy, like a living battery, which means as long as he's got sunlight, he's essentially limitless. The implications made Owens's mind race. And if someone wanted to stop him? Theoretically? You'd need to cut him off from the sun, trap him in darkness, maybe extreme cold or heat to disrupt his energy absorption. But Doc, if you're thinking about trying to neutralize him, I'm thinking about how to help him actually, and how to help all of us if something goes wrong. Jim, you have to see this from my position. An entity with that kind of power, operating without any oversight or control. He doesn't need oversight. He needs friends, support. A chance to be something other than a weapon or a science project. Hopper's voice softened slightly. Look, I get it. You're trying to protect people. That's your job. But sometimes protection means trust. Sometimes it means taking a risk on someone doing the right thing. Owens considered this. In the background, he could hear Rebecca typing rapidly, probably recording the conversation despite his instructions. He'd have to have a conversation with her later about following orders. All right, Owens said finally. I'm willing to trust your judgment, Jim, for now. But I need some assurances. Can this Clark Kent be contacted? Can we establish some kind of communication protocol? Why? Because the Upside Down hasn't gone away, and if another incident occurs, we might need all the help we can get, including his. That gave Hopper pause. You think something's coming? I think the dimensional barrier is fragile. I think the Mind Flayer is patient but persistent. And I think we should have all our resources ready when, not if, it makes another move. That includes our conventional forces, 11 if she's willing, and this Clark Kent. I'll talk to him, Hopper said after a moment. No promises, but I'll talk to him. Maybe arrange a meeting, somewhere neutral. Just you, me, and him. No teams, no backup, no lab personnel. Agreed. When? I'll call you. The line disconnected. Owens sat back, processing the conversation. So Hopper was indeed hiding an alien refugee. The boys were involved. And this Clark Kent apparently had the potential to be either humanity's greatest defender or its most dangerous threat. Sir, Rebecca asked, what are your orders? We do what Hopper suggested. We trust, but we also verify. Keep monitoring that energy signature. If it approaches any sensitive areas, the old gate site, the tunnels, anywhere with residual upside-down contamination, I want to know immediately, and start developing contingency protocols. What kind of contingencies? The kind where we have to stop something incredibly powerful from doing something incredibly destructive. Worst-case scenarios only. And Rebecca? This stays between us and the senior staff. No Pentagon, no other agencies, not yet. Let's see if we can handle this locally first. As Rebecca left to carry out his instructions, Owens returned to the window. Somewhere out there, in the woods or the streets of Hawkins, an alien walked among them. A being from a dead world, adapting to Earth, growing stronger by the day. And whether that would be their salvation or their doom remained to be seen. But Owens had spent the last year learning that the universe was far stranger and more terrifying than anyone had imagined. He'd seen dimensions overlap, witnessed creatures that defied natural law, watched children perform miracles with their minds. One more impossibility hardly seemed worth panicking over, though he suspected that rationalization wouldn't hold up if Clark Kent turned out to be less benevolent than Hopper believed. Sometimes, Owens thought ruefully, it would be nice if Hawkins could just be a normal town for a few months. No monsters, no dimensional rifts, no refugees from dying planets. But that wasn't Hawkins. This was a town where the impossible had taken root, where the barriers between worlds grew thin, where darkness pressed constantly against the light. And now they had a Superman walking among them. Owens just hoped he was on their side when the next battle came, because something in his gut told him it was coming soon. The Mind Flayer was stirring. He could feel it in the data, in the subtle shifts in the dimensional readings, in the way reality seemed to flex and stress around Hawkins, like skin stretched too tight over swelling flesh. Something was coming. The only question was whether they'd be ready when it arrived. The Upside Down stretched endlessly in all directions, a dark mirror of the world above, frozen in eternal twilight. Vines thick as tree trunks crawled across every surface, pulsing with a sickly bioluminescence that provided the only light in this forsaken place. The air, if it could be called air, hung thick with floating particles, spores that drifted like poisonous snow, toxic to human lungs, caustic to human skin. This was Vecna's domain now. Henry Creel, the first psychic child, the one who'd been betrayed and banished, had become something far greater and far more terrible in his exile. Here, in this dead world, he'd learned to command the particles themselves, to reshape them into the towering nightmare form that the children of Hawkins called the Mind Flayer. But Vecna was more than the Mind Flayer. He was the puppet master, the intelligence behind the shadow. And right now, that intelligence was very interested in the new arrival. He stood in what had once been the Wheeler family basement, now a twisted mockery overgrown with decay, and reached out with his consciousness across the dimensional divide. It was harder now, with the gate sealed, with 11's power holding the barrier firm. But thin places remained, cracks in reality where his influence could seep through like water through hairline fractures in a dam. And through those cracks he could observe. He could watch, he could learn about the being that had fallen from the stars. Clark Kent. The name meant nothing, but the energy signature meant everything. Vecna had spent decades in the Upside Down, learning its rules, mastering its properties. He understood power in all its forms, psychic, physical, dimensional. And this Clark Kent radiated power in ways that seemed almost obscene in their abundance. Solar power, biological energy conversion, a living capacitor that drew strength from the very light of the sun. It was beautiful in its elegance, terrible in its implications. If Vecna could possess that body, channel that power into his purposes, the dimensional barrier wouldn't be an obstacle. It would be tissue paper to be torn aside at will. But possession wasn't simple. Vecna had tried to take Will Byers completely, and the boy's friends had burned him out. He'd tried to build himself a body from the flayed, and 11 had destroyed it. Direct confrontation hadn't worked, so he needed to be subtle, patient, clever. He needed to understand his target first, and that meant observation. Through the particles that existed in both dimensions simultaneously, quantum-entangled spores that could relay sensory information across the dimensional divide, Vecna watched Clark Kent train in the woods. Watched him learn to fly, first in clumsy hops that sent him careening into trees, then with increasing grace until he soared above the canopy with the ease of a bird. Watched him practice his heat vision, refining his control until he could cut and weld with surgical precision. But more interesting than the powers were the limitations. Clark grew tired in darkness. His strength waned when deprived of sunlight. His abilities, while impressive, were fundamentally dependent on an external energy source, and if that source could be cut off... "Show me more," Vecna commanded the particles, and they obeyed, shifting their observations to track Clark through Hawkins. He saw Clark with the boys, laughing at some joke Mike had made, his face open and unguarded. He saw him working with 11, the two of them practicing together, pushing each other to improve. He saw him helping Hopper repair the cabin, using his strength to lift logs that would take 3 men to move. He saw him standing on the cabin porch at night, looking up at the stars with an expression of profound loneliness. And Vecna understood something crucial. Clark Kent was isolated, different, powerful beyond measure, yet fundamentally alone. He had friends, yes, but none who truly shared his nature. 11 was powerful but human. The boys were brave but ordinary. Hopper was protective but mortal. Clark stood apart, unique, a being without peers. Isolation was a weapon Vecna knew how to wield. He'd been isolated his entire life, first as a child with powers he couldn't control, then as a prisoner in Hawkins' lab, finally as an exile in the Upside Down. He understood the ache of being different, the hunger for connection with something that understood you. Perhaps he didn't need to possess Clark Kent through force. Perhaps he could seduce him instead, offer him kinship, understanding, purpose. Show him that the human world would never truly accept him, that he would always be an outsider, that his power would always make him feared. But that would require communication, direct contact. And for that, Vecna needed a vessel, a way to project his consciousness across the barrier without triggering Eleven's defenses or alerting Hawkins' lab's monitoring systems. He turned his attention to the upside-down version of Hopper's cabin, focusing on the thin place that existed where dimensions almost touched. Here, the barrier was stretched gossamer thin by years of gravitational stress and quantum fluctuations, not thin enough for a full gate, but thin enough for something subtler. Vecna gathered particles, shaping them, infusing them with his consciousness. Not enough to manifest physically, that would draw too much attention, just enough to whisper, to suggest, to plant seeds of doubt and temptation. In the woods near the cabin, in the real world, Clark Kent paused in his morning flight practice, tilting his head as if hearing something. Good. The connection was working. Vecna pushed a thought across the dimensional divide, a question wrapped in empathy. Do they fear you yet? Clark's eyes widened, and he spun around, searching for the source of the voice. But there was nothing there, just trees and morning sunlight. Yet Vecna could feel his confusion, his sudden wariness. The seed was planted. Over the next week, Vecna continued his campaign of subtle influence. Not commands, those would be rejected. Not threats, those would be reported to 11 and Hopper. Just questions, observations, philosophical musings delivered in moments of quiet, when Clark was alone and vulnerable to introspection. They'll turn on you eventually. They always do. How many have you hurt by accident? How many more will you hurt as your power grows? You don't belong here. You're playing at being human, but you're not. You never will be. I understand you. I know what it's like to be different, to be powerful and alone. The whispers worked slowly, incrementally. Vecna could sense Clark's confidence wavering, his doubts multiplying. The boy was strong, yes, but he was also young, confused, desperate for acceptance, and Vecna was patient. He could wait. He could nurture these doubts until they bloomed into full crisis. But then 11 intervened. She appeared at the cabin one evening, her expression fierce and determined. Through his observations, Vecna watched her confront Clark, saw her grab his arm with surprising strength for her small frame. "Something's wrong," Elle said, her voice urgent. "You're different, distant." "I'm fine," Clark protested, but even he didn't sound convinced. "No, something's in your head, whispering." Elle tapped her temple. "I know, it did the same to Will, the Mind Flayer." Clark went very still. "You think it's trying to possess me?" "Not possess, not yet. Test you, find weakness, build doubt." Elle's eyes narrowed. "But it won't work. You're strong, strong enough to push back." "How do I fight something that's in my head?" "You don't fight. You ignore. Fill your mind with truth, with friends, with light." Elle took his hand. "You're not alone. Remember that. Not alone." Vecna felt his connection waver as Clark's mental defenses strengthened. The boy closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they blazed with determination. The doubts hadn't vanished entirely. Vecna's seeds had taken root too deeply for that, but they were contained now, walled off by conscious effort and Elle's support. Interesting. The girl had recognized his influence and countered it effectively. She'd learned from her experience with Will, adapted her defensive techniques. Vecna would need to be more subtle still, or change tactics entirely. Perhaps direct confrontation would be necessary after all, not possession, but conversation. A meeting of minds, so to speak. If he could get Clark to willingly enter the Upside Down, even briefly, the dimensional barrier would be weakened. And in that moment of crossing, defenses would be lowered. Opportunities would present themselves. But how to lure him in? Clark wasn't reckless like some of the boys. He wouldn't enter the Upside Down on a dare or out of simple curiosity. He'd need a reason, a compelling purpose, or a hostage. Vecna turned his attention to the boys, studying them through the particulate lens. Mike Wheeler, clever and brave. Lucas Sinclair, tactical and loyal. Dustin Henderson, brilliant and inventive. And Will Byers, sensitive and observant, still carrying traces of Vecna's previous possession, still vulnerable to influence in ways the others weren't. Yes, Will would be the key. Not possessing him again. That would be too obvious. But using him as bait. Making Clark believe Will was in danger in the Upside Down. The boy's protective instincts would override caution. He'd come to save Will. And in that moment, Vecna smiled, though his true form had no mouth. The pieces were falling into place. He just needed to be patient, to wait for the perfect moment, to strike when they were unprepared. But he'd underestimated two things. First, the depth of connection between Clark and the boys. They weren't just friends, they were family, bound together by shared trauma and mutual trust. An attack on one was an attack on all, and they would respond with coordinated force. Second, the rate at which Clark Kent was adapting to his powers. Every day under Earth's yellow sun, his abilities grew exponentially. His control improved, his strength increased, his invulnerability solidified. What had been impressive a week ago was now extraordinary. What had seemed formidable was now nearly unstoppable. By the time Vecna made his move, Clark Kent would be far more powerful than the monster had calculated, and that miscalculation would prove costly. But for now, Vecna waited in the darkness, plotting and planning, convinced that victory was merely a matter of time and timing. After all, he'd waited decades in the Upside Down. What were a few more weeks? In the frozen, vine-choked world of the Upside Down, where time stood still and shadows reigned, Vecna prepared for the confrontation to come. And across the dimensional barrier, unknowing and innocent, Hawkins went about its daily business. The storm was gathering, the pieces were moving into position. And soon, very soon, the game would reach its next critical phase. Hawkins' lab at midnight resembled a fortress under siege. Floodlights illuminated perimeters. Armed guards patrolled. Inside, scientists worked around the clock. Dr. Owens studied displays showing dimensional instability. Status? Rebecca consulted her tablet. Quantum fluctuations exceed anything during the invasion. The old gate site is building towards something big. Time estimate? 72 hours, maybe less. 3 days to plan an impossibly dangerous operation. They assembled the team. Hopper, Clark, Elle, the party. Owens wanted the kids back, but Clark corrected. They're veterans. They've earned the right to fight. Will Byers has residual upside-down connection? Rebecca added. He might sense the Mind Flayer when close. Reluctantly, Owens agreed. But they stay back from front lines, coordinate only. The plan had 3 phases. Infiltration into the gate chamber, disruption of the Mind Flayer's dimensional anchor using Elle's abilities while Clark protected her, extraction before dimensional collapse. Simple in theory, impossibly dangerous in practice. The kids made their own preparations. First aid training, evacuation protocols, escape routes. But emotional preparation mattered most. We might not all come back, Lucas said bluntly. Then we make sure we do, Mike countered. We've survived everything. We'll survive this. Because we're together. Will added. That's our strength. Elle sat apart, burdened by responsibility. Clark joined her. You're afraid. What if I'm not strong enough? Then we'll catch you, like you caught me. We're a team. None of us has to be strong enough alone. But my powers, no one else can do what I do. Power isn't just about what you do physically, it's about how you use it, who you use it for, and who stands beside you. Elle smiled slightly. Friends. Exactly. Operation Morning came quickly. They descended into the lab's lower levels where reality grew uncertain, walls showing wrong colors, sounds echoing impossibly. They'd entered liminal space where dimensions overlapped. The gate chamber was terrifying. A huge circular room, walls lined with monitoring equipment. At center, air shimmered, twisted, folded impossibly. There, suspended in that space, was the anchor, a tumor of twisted biomechanical matter, existing simultaneously in both dimensions. Vines merged with metal and circuitry, held together by pulsing psychic energy. Beautiful and horrifying. That's it, Will whispered, where the Mind Flayer lives. Clark felt it too, consciousness pressing against awareness, ancient and surprised they'd found it. You should not be here. The Mind Flayer's voice resonated. This place is forbidden. Mine. Not anymore. Elle said, raising her hands. Telekinesis engaged. Time to go. The anchor resisted, pulsing defensively. Screaming echoed from far away, the Mind Flayer's rage transmitted across dimensions. The chamber shook. Particles manifested, swirling, forming defensive shapes. Clark! Mike shouted. Keep it off her! Clark moved at sonic speeds, intercepting shadows, disrupting particles before they coalesced. Heat vision carved through tendrils. Super breath scattered toxic spores. But the Mind Flayer fought with everything. The anchor pulsed brighter, drawing upside-down power. Equipment exploded. The dimensional boundary tore, rifts opening. Elle screamed with effort, blood from nose and eyes, pouring strength into destabilizing the anchor. She couldn't stop. If they retreated, the Mind Flayer would hide again, wait, eventually succeed. This was their only chance. Together, Hopper said, hands on her shoulders, lending emotional support. Joyce joined, then Nancy, then everyone, forming a chain around Elle, belief and trust flowing into her. Clark realized something crucial. The Mind Flayer was powerful but fundamentally limited. It could possess, control, consume, but not create, not inspire, not generate strength from freely given connection. That was humanity's advantage. Light driving back darkness. Clark channeled his solar energy into visible light. Golden, bright, warm light filling the chamber, driving back shadows. Electromagnetic radiation representing everything the Mind Flayer wasn't. Warmth, life, hope, creation. Particles recoiled, quantum cohesion disrupted. Defensive shadows collapsed. The anchor's rhythm faltered. Elle, empowered by combined support and freed from defense, struck with full might. The anchor shattered. Reality screamed. The dimensional boundary collapsed inward, then exploded outward. Energy backlash sent everyone flying. Alarms blared. The chamber cracked apart, tons of bedrock falling. Move! Hopper bellowed, dragging Elle toward exit. Everyone out! They ran, scrambling over debris, dodging equipment and widening cracks. Clark shielded others from falling rocks, moving obstacles that would crush normal humans. They made it out. Upstairs. Through secured sections. Into morning air. Ground shook another 30 seconds. Windows shattered. Power died. Then gradually, shaking subsided. Dimensional readings stabilized. Quantum fluctuations ceased. Silence fell, broken by heavy breathing and settling damage. Did it work? Lucas asked. Will closed his eyes, reaching toward where he'd always felt the Mind Flayers. Presence, that cold spot, that watching awareness. Gone. It's dead. Will confirmed, smiling radiantly. I can't feel it. The connection's severed. Cheers erupted. Against impossible odds, They'd defeated interdimensional horror, threatening not just Hawkins, but all reality. Owens emerged from the lab. Readings confirm it. Dimensional instability resolving. The Upside Down is sealing itself. That thing's not coming back. Hopper pulled Elle into a fierce hug. She'd risked everything to save them. You did good, kid. We all did, Elle said exhaustedly. Together. At Palace Arcade, they celebrated properly. High scores broken, Slurpees consumed, laughter echoing, joyful and beautifully normal. Hopper pulled Clark aside. You know you can't stay long-term. Government knows about you. Other agencies will ask questions. I know. Owens and I have been talking. He's got connections, can create proper identity, documentation. You could go to college, live normally. Where? Metropolis, probably. Big city. Easier to hide in plain sight. You could work, have a life, use abilities when needed without everyone knowing. Be Clark Kent instead of Superman most of the time. And Superman when people need saving. Exactly. Metropolis has enough weirdness that a flying alien helping wouldn't make top 10 strangest things. Clark considered. All right, Metropolis. But I'm coming back to visit. Frequently. You'd better. Elle would be devastated. Honestly, so would I. You're a good kid, Clark Kent, even if you are from another planet. 2 weeks later, Clark stood on Hopper's cabin porch one last time. His few possessions packed, clothes the boys gave him, a group photo from the arcade, Mike's compass. So you can always find your way back. Elle sat beside him in comfortable silence. You'll call, she said finally. Every week, I promise. And visit. As often as I can. She smiled, then grew serious. The whispers. Are they gone? Completely. Whatever connection the Mind Flayer had died with the anchor. Good. But if something tries again. She tapped her temple. Remember, push. Fill your mind with truth. With friends. With light. I will. The boys arrived, ditching school for goodbye. They gathered around, trying to act casual despite obvious hurt. Don't forget us small-town weirdos. Dustin said awkwardly. Impossible. Clark replied. We got you something. Mike said, handing over a wrapped package. Inside, framed photos, the party at Snowball, and all of them with Clark after the Mind Flayer's defeat. So you don't forget what you're fighting for. Lucas said, I could never forget. You guys saved me. Not just from the Mind Flayer, but from being alone. From thinking I was a monster. You made me feel human even though I'm not. You are human. Will said quietly. Maybe not genetically, but in all ways that matter. You care about people. You sacrifice for others. You choose good even when hard. That's what makes someone human. One by one, they hugged goodbye. Elle's hug was last, fierce and determined. Be safe, she whispered. Be good. Be hero. I will. For you. For all of you. Hopper's truck pulled away. Clark watched through the rear window as his friends waved until invisible. But he could still hear their heartbeats with super hearing, steady, strong, alive. A reminder of everything he'd fought for. Hawkins disappeared behind tree line, but Clark knew he'd carry it always. This town had given him more than hiding. It gave him purpose, friends, understanding of what it meant to be a hero. Not someone who saved people because they had power, but someone who used power because they couldn't imagine doing anything else. You okay? Hopper asked. Yeah, better than okay. Metropolis is different. No small-town charm. You'll be anonymous. Just another face in millions. Makes it easier to have a secret identity. Hopper pulled out an envelope. Your new identity. Clark Kent from Smallville, Kansas, moved to Metropolis for college. Complete documentation. Owens pulled strings. Don't make him regret it. I won't let you down. I know, you're one of the good ones. Hopper, if another threat shows up in Hawkins, if something needs stopping. Will you call me?" Hopper was quiet, then nodded. "Yeah, I'll call. You're part of the team, and teams look out for each other." They reached Metropolis as sunset, skyline spectacular against orange-gold sky. This would be Clark's new home, new hunting ground, where Superman could fly between skyscrapers helping people while Clark Kent lived quietly, perhaps worked at a newspaper, learned to navigate normal society. But part of him would always remain in Hawkins, with a girl who moved things with her mind, with 4 boys who'd welcomed an alien into their party, with a police chief who chose protection over prosecution, with a community showing him humanity's best. And if they ever needed him, Superman would return. Because that's what heroes did. They showed up when called, fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves, chose compassion over cynicism, hope over despair, connection over isolation. Clark Kent, last son of Krypton, had found his home among stars. Now he'd find his purpose among humanity, and he'd become something greater than either world could have created alone. He'd become a symbol, not of power, but of what power could be used for, not of strength, but of what strength could protect, not of being different, but of using differences to make the world better. He'd become Superman, but he'd always remember being Clark Kent first, friend, ally, kid from another world who found his place in a small town where impossible was just another Tuesday. Maybe that was the real story. Not about a superhuman descending from heavens, but about an outsider welcomed by people brave enough to accept the strange and powerful enough to love despite differences. In the grim darkness of the 1980s, where Cold War paranoia and dimensional horrors threatened daily, a light had kindled. A hope had taken root, and that hope wore flannel shirts, had a Kansas address, and would spend his life proving that the symbol on his chest, meaning hope in his dead language, could mean hope in his adopted world too. If you enjoyed this journey through Hawkins with the Man of Steel, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more what-if scenarios, where your favorite characters collide with the world of Stranger Things. What other heroes or villains would you like to see land in Hawkins? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, in a world full of darkness, sometimes all we need is someone willing to be a light.